Jessica DeAngelo, TED Talk extraordinaire, hike to become. God bless you, woman. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Your TED Talk was lit. I was sitting there watching it, and we were in Pocatello.
We were in Pocatello, yeah.
And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, that's Jess, and she's doing a TED Talk, and we're in that giant auditorium. How was that for you?
So it was surreal. It's been like a bucket list for
Cheers.
Oh, cheers.
God bless you. I'm so happy to be doing this with you right now.
Yes. So it was surreal. It's been like a bucket list for, God, like 9 years to do a TED. So I have to correct you. And they're really stringent about this. I did not do a TED Talk. I did a TEDx talk.
It doesn't even
X stands for independent. But you have to be invited to the TED stage. The TEDx stage, you have to apply and get accepted. But yes, it was surreal. It was incredible. It was a lot harder than I ever thought. Weird.
Like in what way? I could imagine it being like really stressful, obviously.
It's super stressful.
The lights, I can appreciate. Lights really actually wig me out. Like we have these side lights and the studio lights. And for some reason, I don't notice them normally. But sometimes when I'm locked into a conversation for like an hour, my vision will get funny because the light's like hitting me. And I can imagine on stage, you must have been.
Lights didn't bother me one bit. No, I think, what was difficult about it is that I found out about a month before I was supposed to deliver the talk. Most TEDx people find out like 3 to 6 months in advance, and they have months and months to prepare their talk, practice it, all the things. And I had 4 weeks, and I had already committed to Disrupt HR the same week. So I was like, cool, 2 brand new talks, same week. And there was like a small part of me, Matt, that was like, you should not do that. Meaning like I needed to give one up. Like I can't handle both. And then there was like another part of me that was like, no, hold my beer.
Yeah.
As my friend Aubrey would say, no, hold my beer.
What happened to that saying? I loved that saying.
That's
hold
a good
my
saying,
beer,
right?
Hold my beer. You nailed it. The thing that I think it's very easy for people to say, oh, I could get up and talk for 15 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. I think the thing that is interesting is as I was watching you do it, and, I had heard a lot of the little snippets and representation. Sure. I had not heard the whole thing yet, but the flow, the pace, the accompaniment with the slides and additional media, that was really, like, as I was watching them, like, oh, she's like skirting this line. She's like, the tightrope is going down, and you were nailing it. And then I saw other people, not bad presenters at all, but I was like, okay, there was a slight bit less continuity, or I was expecting it to end in a different way, or there are all these things. Rogan talks about this frequently. He's like, you have to get people to stop thinking and just trust you and they're like, let me take you through these thoughts. Just turn your brain off. And there were other people that were not as polished with that. So constantly I was assessing what they were doing, or like, I just didn't trust them enough to like take me through their story.
The journey. Sure.
Yeah. How did you like think about that as you were doing it, or were you just focusing on?
Did I think about that
as you were doing it? Well, no, I mean, like when you were preparing, is that something you were like, were you conceptualizing where people might go?
100%.
Like, and giving disclaimers, you're like, and I know some of you might be thinking, blah, 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 and you're like, come back with me here.
Yes. So everything in that talk is 1,000% intentional to the point. So you know me well, right? Like I love research and studying things. So when I approached having a chance on the TEDx stage, first off, I treated it with the utmost respect, right? This is not about me. It's about having an idea to change the world. Full stop. It's not about me. It's about the audience's experience. And so I took it really seriously that I was taking everyone on a journey. And there was really hard parts in writing the script and how I was delivering it to honor that journey. But also, I mean, you were there, and we don't give away my story at the end. But I think, so I had to be really vulnerable, and that was a difficult part, is I had to dig deep, if you will, and be very vulnerable with my experience. And I struggled with that for like 2 weeks in the writing process, to be like, can I go here and honor that experience with the idea of like, that is really showing the audience why this matters. And that was difficult for me. And so yes, everything I wrote was meticulously crafted and practiced. I practiced in front of audiences. I practiced in front of speaking coaches, and I got a lot of feedback, perhaps too much feedback, but lots of feedback. And I've
already had seconds, no thirds, please.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, great. I'll keep eating.
But yeah, there were times when like people would give me feedback, and I'd be like, okay, thanks for that. I don't agree, and move on. But I joke that writing a TEDx talk, if you approach it the right way, is like the Hunger Games of public speaking. Really? There's all these rules. Like I
volunteer.
Right. Like I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah.
Because like, and I speak a lot in front of groups and different things like that. And it's fine. With a TEDx, you have to be under 18 minutes. You have to stick close to the little red rug. Like you have to stay in certain camera angles. Your slides have to, like, you have to get the clicker to work. The slides have to work perfectly. So there's just a lot of, it's a bit like a meticulous show. And that's why I say it's the Hunger Games. Yeah. So I'm grateful I got the experience. It was mind-blowing. It was wild. It was fun.
We should probably tell people what your TEDx was about, right? Like
we're just talking about it like everyone knows. Well, maybe this will drop after the TEDx. Who knows? But so the theme, that's another thing you want to pay when you apply for a TEDx, you pay attention to the theme. So the theme was navigating the unknown. And, you know, my thing is hiking and taking people like out of the office, out of their homes, into the woods to do their best thinking and tap into their authenticity. And so I started to play with that idea a little bit more, like how does navigating the unknown fit with what I need to talk about? And then I started to think, like, I read, you know, my kids' bedtime stories every night, and we read a lot of like the fairy tales, like Little Red Riding Hood. Why does everyone get eaten in the woods? Like, think about every bedtime story, give me one.
Oh, the Beauty and the Beast, right? Like that's a classic. You go into the woods, horrified. You find this monster. You're captive. 100%. Nobody can rescue you.
Right. He might eat you. Who knows? Like
right.
Who knows what the beast eats for dinner? But like, so everybody's afraid of this concept subconsciously. As adults, we kind of grow up and we're like, oh, we don't need to like venture out into the woods alone. That's scary. We might get eaten. And so I love that idea of playing into why do we do that? And then the reality of what I've experienced the past year kind of reveals it's actually not what you think. It's not the monster in the woods. So
there's also speaking of bedtime stories in the woods. I don't know if you mentioned Hansel and Gretel. I feel like you did.
I did. Yeah.
But I think Hansel and Gretel is actually a cautionary tale against lost people in unknown that get like bad advice.
Oh.
Right. So as adults, and again, I think you even experienced this, you may have experienced this with preparing for this. We seek advice, right? And I told you a long time ago that I've never had coworkers. I've always worked alone. I don't take advice from people at all. And I'm just like ferociously careful with who I listen to. And I do listen to you. You're like the one person with business
Thank you.
stuff.
I'm honored. Yes.
You're welcome. Yes. But I get so guarded when I go for advice because I'm so leery of people giving advice that benefits them. Like when I was a younger person trying to get into real estate, I got sucked into, engaging in certain pursuits, and I spent a lot of money. And ultimately came down to the principle that it was like, listen, if somebody benefits to financially gain, or if somebody stands to financially gain from you taking their advice, you need to get different advice.
100%.
Like, because even if you believe they're acting in good faith, there's always a little piece of them that it's like, and if they go along with it, then like I make 10 grand.
Right.
Like, and that's I think the woods, the unknown is not just do you venture into it and you get comfortable just sitting in this weird, horrifying, terrible place. But
it's not weird and it's not horrifying. It's not terrible. It's so fun.
Well, it's not weird and horrifying if you willingly go into it and you're like, I'm going to just hang out here.
Yeah. Well, you have
and it may be horrifying first. Right?
It is horrifying at first. There are moments, not for the reasons we think, but there are moments of like, oh, I'm sitting alone with my own thoughts.
Right.
Whoa, hello. Who are you? Yeah.
Yeah, but then at the end of the movie, the beast comes to save you. Right? Like the cultivation of the wild energy and the insanity becomes the thing that becomes your
savior ultimately.
Ultimately, yes. Yeah. Because in the end of that movie, and I love this view of Beauty and the Beast, like at the end of that movie, everyone's rooting for the beast to go back to the monster he was. And there's an inflection point where he's like considering just throwing himself away because I think the story was that he thought at that point that Belle had been killed, or he couldn't muster up the ferocity to show up and fight off the actual bad guy. And you're like, be the beast, like be who you were meant to be. And he becomes that.
Yep.
And through that, he finds Belle again and he becomes himself, but he still maintains, like, everybody's liberated from their, weird
Magical
transformation.
spell, sure.
Right.
Yep.
And the candlestick becomes the butler again. And like all of these, the teapots, Mrs. Pot and the little teacup. Right. But I think that's such a beautiful thing. There would have been no transformation had Belle not voluntarily been like, I will trade my father's life for my life. Like the whole redemptive father, right? Like you're redeeming the dad. It's like, I will save him. And living in the chaos, then she becomes the Beast and Belle actually become one entity, right? Because they become the couple and they fuse together this domestic, appropriate, socially functioning entity with this incredible power and capacity of the Beast, and they become that couple. Like, it's the ultimate power couple.
I feel like I need to watch this all over again from like Matt Todd's eyes, because I did not think most of that stuff, but wow.
I love but that's like the story. What I think is weird? It's all of Disney used to be this. Like before Disney.
Yeah, before
Disney, okay, we had stories and we would tell our children these stories and we would, and we as adults understood the value of these stories. Then Disney removed the parent from the storytelling paradigm. And it's like, no, they're just going to consume our stories. And they did them very well, right? For a long, like Lion King was the original. Lion King.
Yes.
Lion King was incredible. But then the person who we essentially outsourced the storytelling to changed the story on us. And we're like, wait a minute, we don't agree to this story. They're like, it doesn't matter, we're the storytellers. It's like, not anymore, son.
Yeah. Well, so interesting, when I was preparing for the TEDx talk, okay, I got an original Brothers Grimm, novel.
You went back.
I went back and I read the actual story behind Little Red Riding Hood and Hansel and Gretel, and it's not what we buy for our children today. And it's a little bit darker. It's a little bit more morbid, but I wanted to actually read, what are these fairy tales? Where did they originate from? Right. And I think about Hansel and Gretel, like for me, the big lesson is, so it's two starving children. Their father decides like, hey, well, no, it's like their stepmother says, you have to take them into the woods. Maybe they can survive for themselves. We can't feed them. There's not enough food for all of us. Like, how dark is that? And so the father is torn. He's like, I don't want to do that to my children. But eventually he acquiesces. He takes them into the woods. Little boy's smart enough to drop breadcrumbs back to the cabin and all the things. But they end up stumbling upon a house made like, the whole house is made of candy. Right. And it's like their wildest dreams have come true. Yeah, but like inside is a witch that wants to bake them in a pie and eat them. And so for me, one of the big lessons is, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. There's probably an evil witch that wants to bake you into a pie. So just watch out. I had
a client years ago that they had a lot of this iconic commercial Berkeley real estate. Like they had these properties that were like, 4 stories on the corner of Shattuck and, whatever. And they had, the family had gotten divorced, and the dad was this like real estate guru guy, and the wife had gotten some properties in the settlement, and she was managing the properties, but she didn't have like this phenomenal real estate management background. And she was working with this management company, and this management company had actually told her, they're like, oh, we can make you all of this money. And she was like, oh, great. And over the course of the next several years, they actually they got to the point where the management company came to her and was like, to keep this solvent, you're going to have to mortgage your primary residence. What? Because the management company was trying to get these specific tenants to stay in there and trying to get that property owner to give all these ridiculous, insane concessions. And the owner eventually was like, no, like, call the attorneys. We're going into litigation. Like, she just went scorched earth. And the management company, the gal who she was with, she's like, no, it's going to be okay. We're just going to it's going to be, she's like, no. And she, became like this righteous figure that like burned the whole place down and essentially got what she was supposed to get. But in business, right, which is what you focus on, helping people navigate this unknown, helping people come into understanding themselves in a different way through hiking and through a bunch of other things. Obviously, self-reflection is one of the largest things that comes from these hiking experiences. Is like, you have to navigate all these people that are like, it'll be all right.
Yeah.
Just do what I'm saying.
Let me just take you by the hand. Yeah. Give me tons of money and I will do
Do you think that stepping outside into nature is one of those things that breaks that spell? Because I think
Yes.
we get sucked into narratives even within our own head. And my experience with you when we were, hiking, or I was running and you were hiking.
That you were the only person I've ever had on one of these guided hikes that's been like, let's run. And I'm like, you run, I'll continue walking.
I'll run out and I'll run back.
Yes.
I'll run.
Yeah. But no, you have a unique perspective because you've been on the trail with me. Right. So you've experienced it. I mean, let me ask you, what was your experience like on the trail maybe, and how was that different than what you anticipated?
What I appreciated about it immediately is that I was not staring at the same computer. I was not staring at the same brick wall. Like I was not staring at the same things, because I think all of those stimuli groove into us these like sled paths where it's like, okay, this is the way that you think, like over and over and over. And the engagement that you and I are both in deeply, which is creating something that has either never been done before, or we don't know anyone who's ever done it and have no guide to it, right? Like that's the nature of our entrepreneurial endeavors. It's not like I'm like, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur and open a bagel shop, and I'm going to go over to Noah's Bagel and I'm going to watch what Noah's Bagel does, or Einstein Bagel, whatever you call it. I'm going to go over to the bagel shop. I'm going to watch them, how they do all these bagels. I'm actually going to get a job there and like make the bagels. I'm going to study it, and then I'm going to go do my own thing. But I now have the benefit of that game plan. I know what the revenue model was. I know where they got their supplies. I know all of these things. I'm just going to reproduce that, but call it like Matt's Bagels. I'm not doing that, by the way. But like that would be an easy thing to do. What you and I did is like, cool. Do you know anybody who's done this?
Nope.
Do you have do you have like a playbook? Nope.
I know. We're just like, but I think what's different about this is like taking the plunge, right? Like also what I love about it, and I'm sure probably you do too, is this is fun. This is way more fun than doing it the way someone else has done it. And for me, the results are wildly different. Like wildly different than what people normally get in whether it's strategic planning or motivational speaking. The interactions I'm having with my clients are mind-blowing. And I'm like, whoa. Like,
because you have C-suite people who are coming to you like, oh my God, I need this. This has been the answer I've always been looking for.
I mean, I wish that's what they said to me, but no, I think
you have some people that are overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah,
like I know I'm being ridiculous, but like you also have people who are like, oh yeah, full stop. Like this is it.
Yes, I do work with executive leaders. I do work with some C-suite people. I work with companies, organizations, nonprofits, everything. What I try to focus on is impact-driven organizations or companies or leaders. I want people that give a shit. I want people that want to help humankind in a different sort of way. If you want to just make money, like you and I say, I love that journey for you, but like not for me. So
right, I'm not going to sit down with you and give you like tax advice for a week and then like help it. It's like no, we're engaging in an unknown process, which is like when you get somebody out on the trail. Like I ended up saying things to you. I'm like, I did not see myself articulating that.
Like, wait, what? And it's funny. And that's for me, like the surprise and delight moments where people are like, I had a VIP session with a client yesterday and it was so fun. And we both at several points were like, wow, didn't see this happening. And my process is so different because a couple of things. First off, when people approach strategic plan, okay, let me just like ask you, like strategic planning, give me your gut reaction to those words.
Essentially something is not working within a larger organization and we got to like pinpoint some stuff to fix.
Yeah. Doesn't it sound like, let me run from that as far as I can? Like it's awful and I don't want to do
fantastic.
It. Yeah, no.
I think it sounds great. No. I've never been part of an organization. I'm like, that sounds like fun. Yes. Do we get lunch breaks?
No, right, exactly.
Is there free coffee? Is there free coffee?
All the things.
There's free coffee.
If there's free coffee, but they trap you in a room for 8 to 12 hours with a whiteboard and God knows what else and PowerPoint presentations. And then they just, I don't know, take all the joy and the fun out of it. So what I love to do is I get people out on the hiking trail.
Nobody's stealing my joy.
Nobody's stealing your joy.
But, on the hiking trail.
On the hiking trail. But the most uncomfortable piece is, do you remember the most uncomfortable piece? Probably not for you, but like, because you're used to this. But when the moment that I inform people when we get to the trailhead, I'm like, I'm going to need your cell phone. And then there's like a bit of a like, and I'm like, yep, it's fine. You can give me your cell phone. And then there's like a moment where I'm like, also your smartwatch. And that's when people start melting.
I do. I actually very much remember when we went on that group hike and you were like, hey guys.
Shut it off.
And they were like, well, can I just put it on? And you're like, no. Off.
And the reason being is, so I've been doing a ton of research this past year about the benefits of being in nature. And we all focus on like the well-being benefits and the exercise and the fresh air, and that's adorable. What I really care about is the cognitive benefits and how it actually changes the way your brain functions after about 30 minutes. If you can do 30 minutes unplugged from tech entirely, in movement and in nature, your brain is going to change the way it's functioning. Like your better business ideas are going to come. Like you said, you came up with ideas on that trail that you were like, wow, didn't see that coming. That's part of the process. And so I've also learned kind of a methodology to ask people the right questions to get them into that zone. And it's not about the business at first. It's all about the human being behind the business. What's your why? Why did you start this podcast? Why is that important to you? Who are you serving? I also lead people through like, what do you want your ideal day to look like? Because the business strategy does not matter at all until that particular person gets really right with who they authentically are and why they're showing up every day doing what they're doing. And that's how my approach is different. And I use nature as the tool to sort of get people out of their head, if you will, and into their heart as to why they're doing what they're doing. And then the business strategy is radically different and it's fun. People have fun.
Oh, yeah. It's great. And it is very interesting. I took my boys out on the hike that you actually took me on.
Yeah.
I drove them out there. Yeah.
Current Creek, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Took them out there and I'm not a big hiker. It's like,
you don't say.
Hiking to me is just like, are we there yet?
Yes.
But
Where's
it was like,
the top?
It was this Sunday and I was like, I got to get them out of here. And I take them out and again, 3 boys.
Yep.
And my 10-year-old literally, like he lights up in a way that I've never seen. He starts running down this,
like his dad.
and he's like, Dad, can we do this all the time? Like, I feel so alive. And he's 10. I was like, what the hell are you saying to me right now? And I was like,
cool.
Yeah, bud, like we can do this all the time. Like, no problem. It's fine by me.
Yeah.
And there is that immediate response to, this is actually, I think, okay, I like to drink coffee. Surprise. And I really love drinking coffee with my wife. A friend of mine actually asked me when I was 27, he's like, what does rich mean to you? We were having this conversation. He was in his 40s, but he's like, look, what does wealthy mean to you? Like, what's the target in your life?
All the coffee I can drink ever?
I said coffee with my wife driving around in the car, like looking at houses.
That's really sweet.
Yeah. And that genuinely is it. Like we connect over coffee. And I constantly ask her, I'm like, let's go somewhere. And she's like, we can just make coffee at home. I'm like, but let's go to that new coffee shop. She's like, but like that has trash coffee. I was like, I know, but it's not the coffee.
But I want the experience with you.
Well, it's not just that. It's changing the environment. Because even if we make the best coffee we've ever had, okay, coffee, great. It's the best. And we do make good coffee.
I'm sure.
And then we sit down at our table. As we're sitting in that environment, I'm looking at the cluttered countertop. Sure. I'm looking at the laundry in the laundry room that I got to put away. The dog's bothering me.
You sound like a mom.
My God.
You're like, I can't focus. The house is cluttered.
I'm like that.
But you're
Who
right.
didn't put the crock pot away?
Yeah, right. You're right.
And it's that kind of thing where I feel that still when I come into my studio.
Yes.
And my studio is not, I obviously don't have laundry here. I got to put away, but I have these nagging things that take up my head. And those things rob me of the free reign creativity and the problem solving I know my brain could engage in.
Yes.
And I've learned to cultivate this, which is, look, go to a place where your brain is free to solve your problems.
Yes. 100%.
And just let it go. Like if you let it go, but like if you just get the cauldron bubbling, something will bubble up and it will be a solution. But you have to protect and cultivate that experience and that environment. And if you don't, you'll never give it a chance to bubble. Like, can you just let it work? Let the process work.
Yes. Well, you go fishing, right?
Right.
Same thing as hiking, apparently. I mean, you're staring at nature. You're alone. I assume you're probably unplugged, right? Do you have some really good ideas when you're fishing?
Yeah. The fishing.
Or is it more like meditative and completely disconnect?
The fishing is difficult because it's generally not something I can do alone. So when I am fishing, like fishing example, I go to jujitsu actually. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing about jujitsu is you cannot think and do it at the same time.
Right.
Like if I have a 230-pound gorilla trying to choke me, like I have to focus on that. And then I'm so exhausted when I leave. The 10 minutes following jujitsu, when I'm driving home in my car, are the most idea-rich, fertile minutes of my entire day because I'm too tired to really occupy my mind with the other chores.
Things. Yeah.
And I'm already out of that zone and I'm not back into the studio yet. So it's like this time when all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's a great idea. Right. Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. And I just, start going with there.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I brought you a present.
Oh my God, I got a present.
You got a present.
Oh God bless you, woman.
So there's this.
Oh, the water bottle. Oh, hell yeah.
And this, which was your idea. Now all my clients get one, which is a field journal.
The field notes.
Because everyone's like, how do I keep track of these wonderful ideas I'm having on the trail? And you were like, well, just get them field guides. And I was like, that's brilliant. Pen and paper, like the whole times.
Thank you for both these.
Yep.
First off, I love a good water bottle, and this is beautiful. Who did you get this from, may I ask?
If you flip it over to the back, I think it says RTIC.
TIC?
Yeah.
They make custom stuff?
They do.
Dude, I'm in.
Yeah.
Okay, so that field notes is the other secret weapon that I have. So
Yes.
like whenever 10 minutes following jujitsu, and then from 5 to 8 every day, I put my phone not in the office, not on the counter, in the
Right?
garage.
Yes.
It's not even physically in the house
That's
anymore.
so smart. Yes.
And then I grab my field guide. I just put it in my back pocket. And the number of things that come out of that time where it's like, just jot a note, jot a note,
Yep.
jot a note. And I get this gigantic collection of ideas. And then at 8 o'clock, when I break the seal, then I fire off all these texts or emails or whatever it might be. But what I've realized is if I break the deal with myself and I start engaging in solving one of the ideas or problems that I have, it precludes other ideas from coming forward. Like my brain is trying to work and then I occupy it in doing. Instead of thinking, I'm actually producing. And you can't produce and think at the same time, right?
Exactly.
So I steer myself out of the production and execution realm and just like pin in that idea. And then another one pops up. It's like pin in that idea.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, I like this game. Let's keep pitching. And I keep
doing
ba.
Have you ever done the method where you keep one of those by like your nightstand or a bedside table or whatever? Because so many good ideas happen either, I know for me, like in the middle of the night or first thing in the morning when I wake up and I'm like, whoa. Who was it? Was it Benjamin Franklin or Albert Einstein? One of those would like
all of them,
tie something to their hand that when they would like nod off.
Edison.
Edison, thank you. When he would like nod off,
yes,
it would wake him up and then he could jot down his most brilliant ideas.
Right. So Edison would put balls in his hands. Okay, little like lead balls. And he would sleep in a chair like this. And he realized right as he was falling asleep, when his brain was disengaging from the productivity and went into this hyper creative mode, that's where he had like the craziest ideas and solutions. So the lead balls would drop out of his hand as his hands relaxed and they would hit tin pans on the ground. And he would wake up and he'd be like, I know this because my son did a report on it like last year or something. Yeah,
exactly. Same concept. I mean, we are so distracted by technology. We're kind of ripping our humanity away.
Bring this microphone with you. You're getting far away here. The people want to hear.
You
are farther and farther.
Let me get comfortable.
Yeah, get comfortable. Just take the mic with you.
Take the mic for the journey.
You know what I should do? This would be like a podcast hack, which I think would be hilarious.
Listening.
I should get lapel mics.
Can we go for a hike and do a podcast?
First off, I love that. 1,000% love
fun.
that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. But I would also love to get lapel mics on people that like to move a lot.
Yeah.
Put the lapel mic on, still have the normal microphone so people realize it's a podcast, and then the person could just move around and the audio wouldn't change at all.
Right. There you go. There you go.
That's a little bit of a cheat, but I thought it'd be fun. One thing that I really do like about your engagement is that single-use occupations, to me now, I can't engage in them at all. Like reading a book it's so bougie to me. Like if
What are you talking about? Reading a book is bougie. I just saw a book out there, something about like, I don't know, elk hunting for the average Joe. That's your book.
I didn't say I've read it. I'm not even saying it's
is
a
that
bad
book
book.
Too bougie for you?
No, it's the process
of reading.
Okay, because listen, when you're reading, you need to be stationary. Okay, so no running, no driving, no whatever, walking. Okay,
sure.
You need other people's participation.
No, you don't.
Yes, you do, because you need people to be quiet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's right. You live in a house with 3 boys.
That's right. And wife and like things and dogs. So you can't be moving. You need other people to participate in your engagement. And you have to be at least a moderate energy level time, right? Because you can't be falling asleep, moderate energy level time, and you can't have other things that you have to do. So you have to have your brain functioning, but you also can't be using your brain to like take care of your life.
Right.
All these things have to happen. This is it's like the most luxury thing ever, because in reality,
I never thought of it that
what
way.
I do is like, okay, I'll go for a run and listen to an audiobook. I'm out of the house can be functioning as it is. I'm getting a workout, and like, or I'm driving somewhere. I'm driving to Costco. I'm listening to an audiobook. Like that's preparing me for a podcast or something like. But for you, and because of that, reading a book is very, very difficult for me. Right. And so now what I do is essentially, my boys really like to read. So we have like reading time together where I go and read with them before they go to sleep. And they're like, Dad, come in. So it's dual function. They feel like we're visiting, which we are, but I'm also reading with them.
You're reading your book, they're reading their book, or are you reading to them?
No, we're both reading individual books.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's good stuff. And what I like about your engagement is that you engage in a multi-use activity, which is, it actually is good for you from a health standpoint.
It is.
It is good for you from a business standpoint. It is good for you from a psychological standpoint. So you're checking boxes that like C-suite execs and people that are really trying to solve the world are generally not checking. They're not taking care of their physical health. They're not taking care of their psychological health. They're staying in a very stuck physical state, which produces stuck mental ideas. Like, you're checking all of these boxes at once.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think it's like the definition of insanity. The most successful people out there don't feel like they have the luxury of, air quotes, self-care, right? Or like to do all these things. And the reality is, if they don't, they're going to get completely burnt out. They're not going to have their best ideas. They're not going to function as an authentic leader. So I love it every time I'm out on the trail. And the large part of this is selfish, if I can be so honest, too, is like, when I sort of developed all this, I saw how life-changing it was for me and my business and how I show up. But I was like, wait a minute, I left corporate America because I don't want to be stuck behind a computer screen on Zoom for 9 hours a day. I'm done with that lifestyle. How can I make sure I'm on the hiking trail every day? How can I make sure? And when I hike with clients, it's not just like, oh, the hike is for you, I'm just along for the ride. No, by me participating, my brain is activated at a different level. So then when we get into my office and work on all your stuff, I am at a much higher level of functioning, executive functioning than, I would be.
How do you protect this from yourself? Because this activity was transformative for you as a person, which is how you wanted to share it. But then the transformative experience became something else for other people, and you became this participant. I struggle with this at times in jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu for me is very much it's a religious experience. It's an act of faith and giving and community. Like, it's all of these things, and I have to protect that in a way, right? So, how do you protect your own time hiking?
Oh, yeah.
And how do you not make hiking for you? It's like, I hiked 3 times today, and now I have to go on a hike for myself. Like, how do you protect that?
So I just commit to what kind of I tell everyone else is the 30 minutes in nature and unplugged, preferably walking, creating that bilateral stimulation a day alone by myself. And then I don't have hiking excursions every day, but I don't really ever stack them. So for example, I always pretty much have time to have that 30 minutes alone. I actually have been walking a lot at night in the community, like if I have a daytime hike with people, because at night it's peaceful and it's quiet, and
watch out.
Sorry. And I'm like by myself, which is beautiful. So that's how I protect it, is that 30 minutes is sacred to me, and then the client time is the client time. Is that the answer you were hoping for?
No. Yes, it's the answer. It's the answer. But I really want to ask you, when we first met, you set up an entrepreneur. No. Hang on.
Okay, let's have it.
When we first met, you were setting up an entrepreneurs club just in our community. Yes. And I got a hold of you. I was like, hey, let's do a podcast. I'd love to hear about this. Because people do this all the time. And sometimes entrepreneur clubs just become like company pitches. And you're like, okay, this is not an entrepreneur. This is like a funding mechanism for you. Yeah. Or like a marketing opportunity, right? People want to sell you things. But we talked in our first show about the horror of entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And how difficult it is and how frustrating it is and the roller coaster that you go through.
Yeah.
And since that conversation, you and I have both engaged in additional pursuits that we did not have direction on. Like, we invented this thing. We built the plane while we were flying it. Mm-hmm. And with that in mind, like, what are some of the things that you've had to confront since you started this thing that really exemplify the horror that we both talked about. Previously, we were talking about it kind of like in the past.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, I remember it being terrible 10 years ago.
Okay.
But now, and again, I'd be happy to share some with you.
Yeah, I'm not getting vulnerable in this podcast, and you're not. We're both doing it.
But we both are people that have now lived through in recent past the things we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And like, anyway, that's my question to you.
So the question is,
like, what are the horrors that you knew you were going to experience?
I don't think I knew, Matt. I mean, that's part of the roller coaster.
No, but you know it's going to be horrifying.
Well, yeah.
Like, there's that.
So, okay. So I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is that I am a notoriously very private person. I have been all my life. I don't really embrace social media much, or hadn't until kind of I started my business. And a big part of this is really putting my idea out there and inspiring other people to hike, to find themselves again. And in order to do that, I have to get vulnerable and put myself out there. And that is terrifying. Like, that's really hard. And the more people pay attention to what you're doing, you know, that kind of quote where they're like, at first they call you crazy, and then they ask you how you did it, right?
Right.
So like that sort of mess of like, oh, cool, you know, getting on the TEDx stage or doing Disrupt HR or, you know, any of my speaking engagements that are filmed and could, you know, get out to the masses. I mean, there's part of that that's me being very vulnerable and sort of messy on stage. Not messy, but like, this is me. You know, there was a part in the TEDx where I admit that I had a moment where I felt, not a moment, many moments where I feel like I'm a bad mom. Like, not many people are willing, I think, to get up there and put that vulnerability out there. So I think that's a very terrifying piece for me. However, what keeps me showing up in that vulnerable space and just being honest about my experience and how this has helped me is that the audience and people have come up to me after talks and things I've done and been like, your vulnerability meant the world. I saw myself in that moment. And so I kind of feel like if you're going to show up and just be this perfect polished and this is everything, like, no one cares. Like, your message doesn't matter. No one needs that. People need real vulnerability and sharing your journey and your story, all the messy bits, because that's how people will learn and grow with you. I mean, that's terrifying. You go.
God, that's a terrifying one. Quick comment on that. Guy from Fight Club. Who's it? Ed Norton, the actor?
Ed Norton and Brad Pitt.
Okay. Ed Norton. Of course, I knew Brad Pitt. I'm talking
everybody
about the other
knows
guy.
Brad Pitt, the other guy. Yeah.
Meatloaf. I don't know.
Yes, right.
Ed Norton actually was on Rogan years ago, and I remember listening to his interview, and they were talking about the evolution of actors in Hollywood. And Ed Norton brought up Marlon Brando, and he's like, listen, until Marlon Brando came around, there was this polished Hollywood actor, right?
Yes.
Like, the guy's just right. He's got his hair just right, and he's got a suit just right, and they're delivering the lines. There was also a haste to line delivery from the old movies where the conversations were pushed, right? Like, it was almost like there was a tempo that was pushing, and they were going really ba 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 ba. And, you know, like, generally people don't talk that way.
Right.
It was just this delivery mechanism, and the more polished and the better and the like more pristine people got, the better actors or the more valuable they were to Hollywood. And Marlon Brando really initiated this movement of this, you know, hair's not quite done right, in a white T-shirt, scratching his rib, just kind of mumbling these lines.
Wasn't he known as like a sex symbol back in the day? I don't know. I'm too young. I'm just asking.
I think he was quite attractive.
That he was like real,
right?
Potentially,
right. And I think there was an authenticity. At least this is what Ed Norton was talking about. He was like, there was a reality to him as an actor, right? There was a realness to the experience. And I think Tom Hanks very much enjoyed that too as a younger person. Like, there's an authenticity to him that it's like, he's not perfect. He's not this, but it's like, he's just a dude. Remember him in Big? He crushed it in Big.
I don't remember Big.
How dare you? When he switched bodies with the older guy and he was like the marketing executive.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I mean, I know the movie you're talking about, but I thought it was where like Big was when he was like an adult, but like a kid and an adult.
He switched bodies.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
he switched bodies from like the wishing machine at the fair.
Yes,
I wish I was
did see
big.
That. Yes,
right?
okay, yes.
Yeah, so he had that kind of thing. So again, I agree with you. I think one of the things that you're bringing is this reality, which is like, we're just going to like hike around, and I'm going to tell you, like, this is the messy nastiness of your brain. And I'm going to help you navigate the nastiness, the unknown, because that's where the treasure is.
Right.
Right. Like that. And the treasure you're seeking is seeing the world from a different way so you can bring a different solution.
Right.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
What about you? What's the most vulnerable part for you, putting yourself on a podcast every day for the past, 2.5 years?
I mean, what a weird thing, right? It's actually, I don't feel vulnerable at all anymore because I don't
That's
go
good.
out. I don't go out into the world. I don't see
So you
people.
stay here
I stay here. So I see you
like a gremlin.
like a gremlin, exactly like a gremlin. I stay here.
Okay.
I stay away from
Yep.
sunlight.
Yes, I know. I see that. Yeah.
No, I don't. That's a funny thing because to be vulnerable, you have to observe yourself being observed.
Oh.
And I don't do that. I don't meet the people. I don't like, I started getting pretty regular communication from either people I don't know or like people that have just sparked up conversations. That's kind of cool. But like, again, I don't even meet those people. It's just like somebody on Instagram or somebody shooting me an email, which I'm totally good with. No, I think the one of the hardest aspects of the last 2.5 years is moving forward when you know you have no idea what direction you're going. Like, the means of locomotion. I know I'm going forward in a boat with this engine. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going to make landfall. Right. And I have occasionally seen, it's like, oh, is that the shore? Like, I think I'm going to land it. Right. And then the shore disappears and you're like, do I keep going forward? Right? Like, I know this is it. So I show up every day, like, and to answer your earlier question, I actually don't do field guides near my bed because at some point I have to stop my brain because I'll wake up at 4.
Do you feel the pressure if it's there that like you have to have
It is never ending. Like, at some point I have to be like, listen, head, shut the fuck
How
up.
much coffee do you drink?
It's so bad. And like, I have these anxiety. I also have a manic, I go through manic episodes actually. This is a real no, but like, not like what you think, like real damaging.
Really?
Like, I go through these manic things where I will be getting 3 hours of sleep and I am trying desperately to fall asleep and I cannot stop thinking about something. And it's not enjoyable, but I do know now it's like 72 hours. Like, this is going to wash over you like a very annoying wave. Yeah. And I try to like muddle through the 72 hours and then it's normal again. I'm like, okay,
I'm back. Welcome
the backyard grass was not that big of a deal.
Yes,
It's like, it's literally things like that. I'll go into this manic hyperfixation on something and I can't stop thinking about it.
Yep.
And sometimes like if it's actually relevant to the podcast, then it's like cool. But it's a lot of times it's like the countertop.
Random. The cluttered countertop.
No, just the countertop.
Just the countertop.
Just the countertop.
Oh, okay.
Like,
oh my God.
yeah. But it's I think we touched on this really the first time we talked. It's going forward and having faith that it's like, I don't know 100% where I'm going, but I know this ship is going to get me somewhere valuable. I just don't know where I'm going. And that's, well, I can tell you now, because this is not going to air before it happens, but the governor is coming on Friday.
I know. I'm so excited.
It's awesome. By the time this comes out,
yes.
the episode will have dropped.
Yes.
But getting to the point, I was talking to Phil McGrain, Secretary of State, a couple weeks back, and he was like, dude, you showed up here less than 3 years ago, not knowing anyone, not having like money for investment or like any, he was like, and in under 3 years, you like, think of the people you're connecting with. It's like, the ship works. I just don't know where I'm going with the ship. Like, I don't know where this is all leading me. Like, more people are jumping on the ship. Like, now my ship is gigantic and I have a collection of people. They're like, yes, we're happy to be here on the ship. I'm like, great. Where are we going?
What are we doing? Yes.
What are we
doing? Also, who has the treasure chest? No.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really horrifying, like, and that's a daily thing for me still. Like, I'm still going. I don't know where I'm going.
Well, okay, so maybe I can offer up. So I've been practicing the past few months. Part of the messy bits of being an entrepreneur and all the things is I'm a high achiever. I'm a perfectionist. I like things a certain way, and you have to let go of a lot of that in entrepreneurship because you just have to get stuff done. But the past few months, I've really been letting go of like my expectations on a thing and being like, so I don't fully understand what's going on right now. And I'm just going to lean back into the universe like a trust fall and
like a trust
fall. And just embrace the idea that the universe, God, higher power, whatever you choose to believe in has a plan here. Give you an example. So I applied to 5 TEDx's this year. I was rejected by 2. 3 ghosted me. I was at an event and one of my close friends was there. We went out to dinner. She shared with me she was accepted for a TEDx, which is beautiful. And I was so excited for her. And in my moment of like expressing my excitement for my friend, she was like, I told them I would let them know. And I was like, what?
How do you mean?
I was like, come again? And so very close with this friend. And I just shared with her, I was like, look, you make your choice, whatever you want to do, but I just want to share a different perspective. Here has been my experience. What if this is your only shot to get your message on stage? So whatever, we leave dinner later that night. The next morning, I wake up in this shitty hotel we're staying in, and my shower doesn't work. And of course, I just got back from like my morning hike walk in the middle of Dallas. And I'm like, so I run down to the front desk and I'm like, I need a new room. And they're like, yeah, we're sold out. I was like, what do you mean? This is like an 800 room hotel. I know you have a room somewhere. And they're like, no, completely booked. And I'm like, great. So I get a hold of my friend Steph. And I'm like, can I come shower in your room? It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. She's like, sure. I get up there. She's having a phone call with her best friend talking about, does she accept this TEDx or not? What does she do? Anyway, they're debriefing. And then she says to me, I think I'm going to accept. And I'm like, I think you should.
I think.
And she's like,
What?
do you want to be here for that call? And I'm like, this is sort of a big deal. Like,
Yeah.
to be selected for a TEDx, you have been chosen among hundreds to thousands of applicants to share your message, and you're like 8 or 10 people. I'm like, yeah, I want to be here while you make the call. So she makes the call, gets off the phone, super emotional. It's a wonderful story. And then she turns to me as a good friend and she's like, I believe in your message and I think you're going to get on the TEDx stage and all the things. And I'm like, you know what? Thank you. But this moment's about you. Let's celebrate you today. Also, I've made peace with it. Like, maybe doing a TEDx is not part of my journey, and that's fine. I'm going to just keep hiking along and doing what I do. I'm going to write the book, whatever. 6 hours later, Matt, I'm sitting in a room with her and I get an email. Congratulations, Jessica, you've been accepted as a TEDx speaker. And it's basically in our backyard. So then you, other friends can come join and celebrate. My husband can be there. My point is we don't always know what the journey is, but I can give you example after example of things that have happened like this, where I'm just like, you know what? I embraced the universe that the other cities I applied for were not for me, because I was supposed to be here in Idaho when I delivered my message in front of my friends and my husband who could come support me. And that's awesome, but unexpected. Like, I forgot I applied to that one, by the way. I got the email and I was like, TEDx where? And I was like, oh, I applied like in April. I was like, wow.
It's so great. Like, it was so wild. And again, very embarrassing for me to admit this.
Oh, boy.
But and you remember this very clearly, but when you told me in December and you had started the hike to become Instagram, and I saw it and I was like, what is she doing? And there we were on the steps of the clubhouse after the meeting, and you were like, this is what I'm doing. And it was everything I could do to keep my eyeballs from rolling out of my head and like down the street. Come on, never to be seen again.
This was so funny because I remember this moment vividly too, because we're like outside of the entrepreneurs meeting. Everybody's like wrapping up and leaving.
Oh my gosh, it was such
dark.
a jerk.
The twinkly lights are out, and I'm like,
dying roses because it was December.
Right, and I'm like, so Matt, I think I'm gonna start hiking with clients, and I have never seen you get so quiet in your entire life. You were trying so hard not to tell me it was a dumb idea. But I saw, like, your face right now is exactly the face you gave me. And I'm like, cool. So he thinks this is stupid and I'm still going to do it.
I'm still going to do it.
Because you weren't the only one, by the way. I had a lot of people be like, what?
This is actually another piece of the anxiety of an entrepreneur that I think I've learned really, really well, which is not like, you have to have all the things, right? You have to have something that you're actually doing, right? Yep. You have to actually be doing it, right? It's not like I have this idea. It's like, well, execute, right?
Sure.
Like, but the other thing is you have to at once believe that you know what to do and you're going to do the right thing, and have enough humility to realize you have no idea what you're doing and you have no idea how this is going to work out. And having both of those things coexist all at once, which is like believe in yourself and you have no idea what you're doing. It's like, it's the weirdest
It's really
paradox.
weird. It is, yeah.
But this is a perfect example, because it's like, were you to be like, oh, Matt's not an idiot and he thinks this is a weird idea, like maybe it's what the hell do I know? Like, I have no idea. Right? Like but having the imagination, the creativity, and then the follow through, because that's the other thing. You had this idea, and in under 12 months later, you're on a TEDx show or on a TEDx stage doing what you do, talking about what you've done. And it's like, you had this idea. And then you had the execution. And then you had, what was it, 11 months? So like 330-ish days of believing every single day that it's going to work, even though you had no reason to believe it would work, because like you were surrounded by people who were telling you like, this is, or I didn't say anything. I just want to be clear.
You said it with your eyes.
Not saying something was the biggest statement I probably could have ever made.
Yes, for you, absolutely. Well, I think a big part of this is trusting in yourself. Right. Wouldn't you agree? Like, even though there's so many hard moments of this, but I've had all these glimpses throughout the year of, oh, this is going to work. Oh, this works. I had an experience, one of my favorite events that I've ever done was this past September. I was with a group of 10 executives and we did a campfire chat around a real campfire. Huge pet peeve of mine is when people are like, let's have a fireside chat and there's no fire on Zoom.
I went to a place this last week and they had a projection screen with a campfire on it on either side of the stage.
Doesn't count.
They're like, we're going to have a campfire chat. I'm like, this is not a fireside chat.
No, this is not a fireside chat. But I got to share the Hike to Become story around a campfire with all of these awesome executives that are changing lives. And then the next morning, we woke up really early and we went on a guided hike through to a waterfall and everybody kept their tech off. The coolest part of that experience, Matt, was that as I watched, I was, obviously hiking first. As I watched all of them come up to this epic waterfall hike that I had picked, no one fumbled for their phone. Everyone took a beat and just looked at the incredible rainforest we were in and this waterfall. And then I led them through like a forest bathing exercise where you
took off all your clothes and just...
Literally everybody.
Everyone got naked and they were cool.
No, right.
It's awesome. Hike to swim.
Hike to swim. One gentleman did do a cold plunge and he's my hero in the waterfall, but
with clothes on.
With clothes on.
Okay.
With a swimsuit on. But the point of the experience is all about being powerfully present without distraction and just being alone with your thoughts in nature. And watching them go through this process was just like such an emotional moment for me. Because I can't even explain it. I had this like pinch myself moment of this is my job. And I created this to lead people through this experience. And at the end of the day, they all took something away from it that then they can take back to their lives. How do they disconnect every day for 30 minutes and give themselves that moment back so that they can reconnect with who they truly are and then show up as that leader for their team, that parent for their child, whatever. It works. And the more, so to your point is like, yes, there's the trust fall into the universe. There's the questioning yourself. It's really, really hard. But what's kept me going is throughout the year, a lot of mornings I'll wake up and I'll have text messages, social media messages, selfies people take. And they're like, you inspired me to go for a hike today. I got one the other day from a fellow TEDx speaker actually. And she was like, okay, so normally I would sit in a coffee shop and do my thinking, but I went for a hike because of you, unplugged. And it was cold. Also wonderful. Like that lights me up that like this has nothing to do with money or my business or anything and everything to do about inspiring people to find themselves again. That's cool. Like, so that keeps me going, even though I still have moments where I'm like, this is crazy. It's working.
Right.
And people are sharing that with me, which is incredible.
Man, it's so cool. If I may, one more just, kind of one-off question that's silly. What's the craziest idea somebody's come up with when you're like, okay, so where do you see yourself? Because I mean, this is, you get, and again, you don't have to share, but you ask people to be vulnerable. You ask me, it's like, listen, like we're out here on a hillside. Like if you're not being honest with me, like nobody can hear you. Right. Like just tell me your thoughts. Yeah. Like there's no one here. And I came up with some like ridiculous things, but I have to imagine you hear people and you're like, didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Or like, okay, love that for you. Alrighty, let's turn around and go back to the car.
You know what's so fun though? I think all the crazy ideas are when my job gets really fun. So I can't get into the specifics because of just...
Obviously, somebody's engaging in a business and they're trying to make it happen.
Yeah, but like, so yesterday I had an experience with a client that we both anticipated it was going to go in one direction with her background and her experience and all the things. And then we got out. We actually did the Current Creek Trail. And then I've started to include more grounding in my practice where we just sit and we take off our socks and shoes. Sounds crazy. And we just sit and ground our feet in nature and we just talk for a while. And through that process, we got to the other side and it was like, oh, your venture has nothing to do with everything in the past and everything to do with this new thing that and it was so funny. We got back into the office, and again, the specifics are interesting, but we got back into the office and we're like brainstorming it. And I'm like, okay, I never wrote that word on the board for strategic planning. Never wrote that word before. Like, it really went in some really cool directions. And at the end of the night, we were both blown away. Like, whoa.
Did you have to get a dictionary so you knew how to spell brothel? I'm just curious. Anyway, it's not something you write on the board.
I'm just something you write on the board.
Never thought I'd be having this conversation.
Never. Another recent experience I had with an organization. I'm just going to let that drop.
I'm a terrible person.
You're a terrible person. Was that going into the whole strategic planning process, they were wrestling with this big decision that they had to make. And it was like, are we this or are we that? We have to make a choice. And through the entire process, and we did like a 2-hour hike and unplugged from tech and all the things, they actually came to and I did not guide them. I did, but like I didn't see, a lot of times I don't see the results before we get there. Actually, more often than not, I don't. And we got to the end of it and they realized that the thing that they were thinking was their critical weakness and they had to make a decision was actually their ultimate strength. And like everybody's mind, including mine, was blown. And like, yeah, that's true. No one else is doing what you're doing the way you're doing it. And the entire time you're thinking this is a weakness.
You have
because
to conform,
of that,
right?
You have to conform to the box and you have to choose one path. Well, what if having both paths actually sets you apart from the masses? And that's what they determined. And it was like, whoa, that's pretty cool.
That's great. What do you think about, I'm really sick of hearing about how AI is revolutionizing things. And I know it is, right? Sure. But I'm in the face of all this, I'm still optimistic because what I think will be thrown into incredible focus is our capacity to create novelty, or our capacity to find novelty and promote our brains in this fertile way. It's like, come up with something, because ultimately, like I asked ChatGPT today, just like something dumb, and it scours the internet and like comes up with the best answers. Like, well, Matt, you should do blah, 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 like 10 things, right? Mm-hmm. But that's only because that's what it finds on the interwebs.
Yes, correct.
Right? Like it's a compilation of all human knowledge. Fine. Or at least human knowledge that's published on the interwebs, which is likely a lot. But I think like we're going to start valuing creativity and novelty and atypical solutions more and more, and people that can derive these solutions and ideas, right? Like that's where it's like, okay, create something new, ChatGPT. It's like, oh, I can't.
Oh, I can't. That's
I
not
can't.
my job.
Like my job is to really just, grab, and I'll harvest through this information better than anything. But I can't do that. Like I can't go on a hike and come up with a completely novel way to do this.
Right.
And I can only actually answer the questions that you ask me, which means asking the right questions, coming up with the right question in the right direction. Again, a kind of novelty and atypical path. Do you see that what you're doing, would you agree that what you're doing is starting to tap into that creative aspect that cannot be replaced by the AI?
Yes. And I'll give you some examples. So a study out of Stanford University showed it actually studied people for 4 days, backpacking and hiking completely unplugged. They measured their creativity levels before and after, and don't ask me how. I can't really remember those. Sure. But
they could ask you like the brick question, right? Like how many uses for brick? How many uses for a blanket?
There's creativity tests or whatever. But the baseline metric, after 4 days in the wild, unplugged, in movement, their creativity skyrocketed by 60%. That's human beings unplugged from technology. So there's that. Also, like Steve Jobs was famous for, it's written in his biography, when he was stuck on an idea, he didn't stay in the office. He literally went for a walk outside, barefoot, because he understood grounding.
He had to ground.
But that's what he did for his best ideas. Albert Einstein took walks around his lake on his property, and like theory of relativity. Like human beings need to stop being so tethered to technology in all the different ways if we want to come up with our best ideas. It's becoming hyper competitive for those best ideas because of the advent of, smart tech, AI, all of that. So if you really want to get serious with your business, with whatever you're doing and have your best ideas, the science all shows. Unplug 30 minutes a day, get out in nature. Like the end. It's not difficult. It's not time consuming. Are you a fan of Tim Ferriss? Oh boy.
I know Tim. Okay, no.
Oh yeah.
I'm not. I like.
Do you know who Tim Ferriss is?
I'm
the
loosely
4-hour
aware.
body guy,
Yeah.
the 4-hour chef. So Tim's big thing is like, how do I do the thing with the least amount of effort, time, money, whatever effort you're putting into the thing for the maximum amount of benefits?
Yes.
And I love that principle.
Love that.
Love that. So when I had this big epiphany myself, at first I was like, oh, okay, like I need to go hiking. And my first thought was, well, I'll just go hike the Pacific Crest Trail for 3 months. Then I was like, wait, I have 2 toddlers and a husband who would murder me if I left him alone, right? With like 2 toddlers for 3 months. And I was like, so that's not what I can do right now.
God. That's not in my
That's not in my cards. And then I like leaned back and I was like, okay, but how do I replicate something similar that, one, is a small chunk of my day. Anybody can do it because I'm a mom to toddlers. I'm a busy entrepreneur. I'm doing all the things. And then 2, how do I make it something that can be a daily habit, not this like random 3-month thing where you find yourself and then lose yourself again in 3 months. And so
it would smell so bad when you came back. It would be just, and your hair.
I was not committed to the idea. It was a fleeting thought. And then I remembered if a grizzly bear didn't eat me, Steve would murder me upon return.
Well, you'd go out one hell of a bang.
Right,
Either
exactly.
way.
One smelly bang.
Yeah.
But my point to all this is it was by accident that I was like, I just need 30 minutes. And then later I found the research when I started experiencing the benefits for myself. I was sleeping better. I was way less anxious. My creativity was going through the roof. And I stopped questioning my ideas. Like, you know how like you're in the office or you're working and you have a good idea and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then you're like, no one will go for it. And then it just dies.
Yeah.
When I'm on the hiking trail, the opposite happens. I go, oh, that's cool. Let me play with it for a bit. Okay, who would go for it? Okay, who wouldn't think it's crazy? Who could I try this with? And so I guess my point is I eventually found the metrics and the science backed where 30 minutes or more is where your cognitive function switches. And I'm like, oh, that's why it works. So the whole premise behind the Hike 31 challenge is all you need is 30 minutes a day. Anybody can do that.
Anybody can do that. Who owns your ideas?
Me.
No. You're missing what I'm saying.
Oh.
Like,
You mean like in general?
Just like, it's so funny I love playing with ideas.
Yes.
And I love creating ideas. But it's like, where did that idea even come from? Like who made that? Right?
You did. No?
No, but okay. But am I just a compilation of the right stimulus and environment with like my dumb brain chemistry? Like, I don't know. It's just it's a funny thing because you're like, I play with these ideas. It's like, I love playing with it. Like, it's like, in my head, it's literally like a cat with a yarn ball. It's just like,
I mean, that's how I would imagine it would be for you.
Oh, but like 1,000 cats.
Yeah. But lots of coffee. Cats on coffee.
A lot of catnip. And it's like, it's just such a funny thing. It's like, how did this idea come to you? Like, where did this idea originate? Are you the first person to have this idea? Or did you stumble upon an idea that other people have had that you are not connected to even in the least?
Yeah.
That like people have been studying. You're like, I had no idea there was this like hiking, like field of study, right? Or nature field of study. It's like, okay, whose idea was that then? You just stumbled onto this idea. Did the idea exist pre you?
100%. Listen, nothing I'm doing is like novel or like new. It's literally just we've forgotten because we're too busy, right? We're too tethered to all the technology. But yeah, the idea exists. And tons of people have researched and studied this and put it into practice. I think one of the most shocking things for me, though, is in business and in corporate America, we shun nature like it's sort of like a weird perk. And we're like, no, you can take a walk on wellness. You and I joke about take a walk on Wellness Wednesdays. Like, no, actually, nature is the ultimate productivity hack we have. So my big thought is like, why aren't we including this in our workday? Why doesn't, I mean, you and I can do it. We're entrepreneurs. We can build it into our schedule, whatever we want. But people who have office desk jobs, what would happen if they took a 30-minute walking break unplugged every day?
Right.
What would happen to the productivity of that company? The creativity, it would go through the roof. But we're still like regulating nature to like a closet somewhere. Like it's
I know.
Quiet.
Do you remember I can't remember what movies it was, but I saw the representation of the executive running around the rooftop of like a New York skyscraper, and like his team is behind him, like take furiously. It was like a bunch of movies from the 80s and 90s had that portrayal of the CEO, like, I got to get my workout in. And then like the secretary's like running behind him, and then call Jonathan.
Yes.
And get Archibald on the phone. Like, It's like, that's one of those things that if you look closely enough, people have been struggling to insert this forever. And sometimes it's done really clunkily, if that's a word. And sometimes it's like, okay, yeah, like he was stuck in this, just thinking about that. It's like, all right, he was stuck in this skyscraper. He didn't have somewhere, and he went to the roof and just ran around. Right. Like when I was living back in when I was younger, my wife and I were living in Berkeley just after we got married, and I would go up to the stadium like 3 times a week. If I wasn't going to jiu-jitsu, I'd go to the stadium and just run stadiums for like an hour and a half. And it was the most bonkers experience. I so wish we had something like that.
Stadium for you to run around here.
It was like, I cannot express to you the things that happened in my head as I was doing, because it was horrible. It was painful. I would like go through these like elated moments, and then I'd be crying, and like and I would just keep running. It was like totally Finding Nemo. It's like, just keep running,
keep swimming,
just keep going. And you get this burst of like, you're going up and it's like all terrible. And then you just walk down and you just boom, boom. Yeah. Man, it's something. Jess, listen to me. We have been talking for a while. God bless you. Will you come back in like another 3 months and do a checkup? And like, we will talk about what other incredible things you've done with Hike to Become.
Great. And then like, maybe I can get you on a hike podcast. I don't know if that's possible with the wind and stuff, but like we could have fun on like a walking podcast.
No, I think we absolutely could do that.
Imagine the ideas we could come up with.
I think all we have to do is set up a time frame and then be flexible enough with each other. It's like, okay, it's not windy. Go now.
Let's go.
Right. Like, and then we just leave. And like, we could absolutely do that. I'll throw the audio equipment like in a backpack, and then we can
love it.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you for coming. Hike to Become on Instagram. And how can people find you?
Actually, it's just my name, Jessica DeAngelo. Okay. I think like 1 on Instagram. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Jessica DeAngelo, or hiketobecome.com. You can find me.
That's awesome.
Yes. I'm easy to find.
God bless it. Thank you for coming, and I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.